Leo Maxwell moved through the vast, echoing spaces of the Harmony Creek Martial Arts Center, like a shadow, his presence barely registering despite the squeak of his mop bucket. In his mid-50s, with a quiet demeanor that bordered on invisible, he was the night janitor, a solitary figure in a world of gleaming hardwood and disciplined energy. The scent of floor wax mingled with the faint, lingering smell of sweat and liniment, a testament to the day's rigorous training sessions. As he pushed his cart, his movements were fluid, economical, each wipe of the cloth, each sweep of the broom, executed with a practiced efficiency that spoke of years of physical labor. He preferred the solitude of the late hours, eating his meager lunch alone on a worn folding chair in the janitor's closet, a battered copy of Moby Dick always open beside him. He wasn't antisocial, merely reserved, finding comfort in the quiet rhythms of his work and the company of classic literature. The world outside Harmony Creek's walls rarely intruded, and that suited Leo just fine. One particularly late evening, as Leo was meticulously buffing the main dojo floor, he noticed a young man, perhaps 16, practicing alone in the far corner. It was Michael, a promising but often frustrated student. Michael was attempting a complex spinning hook kick, a difficult maneuver that required immense balance and precision. Again and again he failed, stumbling, his frustration mounting with each aborted attempt. He kicked at the air, cursed under his breath, and finally threw his hands up in despair, on the verge of giving up. Leo, who usually maintained a strict distance, found himself drawn to the boy's palpable discouragement. He hesitated, a faint flicker of an old instinct stirring within him. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, Leo walked over. He didn't speak, didn't offer grand advice. Instead, he simply positioned himself slightly behind Michael, mimicking the boy's stance with an unexpected, almost ethereal grace. Then, with a subtle shift of his weight and an almost imperceptible adjustment of his hips, Leo demonstrated the precise angle, the tiny, critical nuance that Michael was missing. He didn't touch the boy, didn't make a sound. Michael, startled by the silent presence, looked at Leo, then at the floor, then back at Leo's posture. A spark of understanding lit his eyes. He tried the kick again, incorporating Leo's subtle adjustment. This time, the kick flowed, powerful and perfectly balanced, slicing through the air with newfound precision. Michael stared, astonished. He turned to thank Leo, but the janitor was already walking away, simply offering a small, encouraging nod before resuming his work, disappearing back into the comforting anonymity of his duties. He sought no praise, no recognition, only the quiet satisfaction of having helped. This simple, unsolicited act of profound insight and silent guidance, helping a frustrated youth overcome a physical and mental barrier, was Leo's quintessential save the cat moment. It demonstrated his hidden depth, his innate kindness, and a remarkable, intuitive understanding of martial arts that belied his humble profession. Beneath Leo Maxwell's stooped shoulders and perpetually tired eyes lay a history that few in Harmony Creek, or anywhere else for that matter, knew. He carried a small, faded scar above his left eye, usually obscured by the rim of his glasses, a quiet memento of a life once lived in a very different arena. When he cleaned the main hall, his gaze would sometimes drift over the gallery of framed photographs adorning the walls. Legendary martial artists, past champions, revered grandmasters. He would avert his eyes from one particular sepia-toned photograph, an old, slightly blurry image of a local boxing legend from decades past, known only as Leo the Lion. The boxer in the photo possessed a fierce, determined gaze, a look that, strangely, seemed to echo in the depths of Leo Maxwell's own eyes when his glasses were off and his guard was down. There was an uncanny resemblance, a shared intensity that hinted at a forgotten lineage, a buried past. And then there were his movements. Even in the mundane act of mopping the floor, there was an almost unsettling fluidity, a subtle balance and economical grace that went beyond mere efficiency. His steps were silent, his turns precise, his body shifting with an inherent understanding of weight distribution and momentum. It was the unconscious elegance of a practiced athlete, a mastery of physical form that was deeply ingrained, almost muscle memory. He would often find himself performing complex, almost dance-like routines with his mop, without even realizing it, his body moving with a silent, disciplined rhythm. These small, seemingly insignificant details, the averted gaze from the old photograph, the uncanny resemblance to a forgotten legend, the almost imperceptible grace in his everyday movements, served as the planting of a seed of mystery. They whispered of a formidable past, a hidden talent, a story waiting to be uncovered, subtly preparing the reader for the shocking revelation to come. The man they saw as a simple janitor was, in truth, a legend in disguise, his quiet life a deliberate refuge from a spotlight he had once known. The Harmony Creek Martial Arts Center, usually a sanctuary of disciplined training, buzzed with an unusual excitement. It was the day of the highly anticipated regional tournament, and the air crackled with anticipation. Leo, despite his usual detached demeanor, found himself lingering near the main dojo after finishing his morning cleaning rounds. The scent of liniment and freshly waxed wood was stronger today, mingling with the nervous energy of the competitors. He watched from the shadows, a silent observer of the spectacle. At the heart of the commotion was Darren the Dragon Thorne, a young, formidable MMA black belt, and the undisputed rising star of the center. Darren exuded a raw, almost predatory confidence, bolstered by his recent string of undefeated victories. He moved with a cocky swagger, his muscular physique a testament to relentless training, his eyes often gleaming with an almost cruel amusement. He was charismatic, drawing a crowd with his flashy techniques and arrogant pronouncements. After delivering a particularly brutal yet victorious sparring session against a clearly outmatched opponent, Darren took center stage, basking in the applause. He began to pontificate about true discipline and the warrior's spirit, his voice booming with self-importance. As he spoke, his gaze swept across the room, landing dismissively on Leo, who was quietly wiping down a nearby bench. With a condescending smirk, Darren scoffed, "Some people talk about discipline, but they wouldn't know real grit if it swept the floor from under them. Some people are just built for less." His words, though seemingly general, were a pointed, deliberate jab at Leo, clearly intended to demean and belittle him in front of the adoring crowd. It was a direct, public insult, a thinly veiled attack on Leo's dignity and worth simply because of his humble occupation. Leo, who had mastered the art of invisibility over decades, felt the sting of Darren's words. His grip tightened almost imperceptibly on the rag in his hand. His first, most powerful instinct was to simply disappear, to melt back into the shadows of the cleaning closet, to let the words drift by like harmless smoke. He had perfected the art of non-confrontation, building a quiet, solitary life precisely to avoid such spotlights. The deep-seated aversion to conflict, a desire to maintain his carefully constructed anonymity, warred within him. He felt a deep, uncomfortable ache, a familiar sense of indignation rising from long-buried memories of similar slights. He wanted to maintain his carefully curated peace, to not rock the boat, to simply exist. He was a man who understood his place, or at least the place he had chosen for himself. But then, something shifted. As Darren's loud, derisive laughter echoed through the dojo, Leo felt a different kind of stir. It wasn't anger, not exactly, but a cold, clear recognition of the blatant disrespect, the casual cruelty inherent in Darren's words. It was the same kind of arrogance, the same unearned sense of superiority that he had encountered and fought against in a lifetime long past. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through his hand. The desire for peace was strong, but the deeply ingrained instinct to defend dignity, to challenge unwarranted arrogance, began to awaken within him. It was a subtle internal battle, the quiet man against the sleeping lion, his long-suppressed past threatening to break through his carefully constructed facade. Darren, seeing Leo seemingly ignore his taunts, felt a surge of frustrated irritation. He craved recognition, dominance, and Leo's quiet indifference felt like an affront to his carefully cultivated image. "Hey, Janitor!" Darren called out, his voice louder this time, his grin widening, a malevolent glint in his eyes. "Didn't you hear me? I said some people are just built for less." He then strode purposefully towards Leo, his large frame casting a shadow over the smaller, older man. Darren stopped directly in front of Leo, blocking his path, his presence overtly intimidating. He jabbed a finger, playfully but mockingly, at Leo's chest. You know, all this cleaning, it's not really real discipline, is it? Tell you what, why don't we have a little spar? Just for fun. See what real discipline looks like. As he spoke, he tapped his black belt, a blatant display of his superior rank, making it clear he intended to humiliate Leo in front of the dozens of students and instructors now gathering, drawn by the commotion. Leo's eyes, usually veiled behind his glasses, hardened imperceptibly. The casual disdain, the public challenge, the physical encroachment. It was too much. This was no longer a subtle insult. It was a direct, inescapable confrontation. Darren's act of physically blocking his path and issuing an open challenge to Spar solidified the moment as the point of no return. Leo could no longer simply walk away. To do so would be to accept the humiliation, to validate Darren's cruel assessment of him. The past, the legend he had carefully buried, was now clawing its way to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. He felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the forgotten rhythm of a different kind of battle. The quiet janitor's life, his carefully constructed world of anonymity, had just been irrevocably shattered. The unspoken challenge had been delivered, and Leo Maxwell knew, with a chilling certainty, that he would have to answer. The challenge hung in the air, a thick, palpable tension that silenced the excited chatter in the Harmony Creek Martial Arts Center. Darren the Dragon. Thorne stood before Leo Maxwell, his chest puffed out, a mocking grin stretching across his face. "So, Janitor," Darren sneered, his voice loud enough to carry across the hushed dojo, "you gonna just stand there and wipe your little rag, or are you actually gonna spar? I thought you'd at least have some fight in you." He took a step closer, his eyes gleaming with anticipated triumph, enjoying the public humiliation he was orchestrating. He relished the spotlight, the power he wielded over the older, unassuming man. He expected Leo to back down, to cower, to confirm every preconceived notion Darren held about those he deemed beneath him. Leo's grip on his mop handle tightened, his knuckles turning white. He felt the collective gaze of the students and instructors, a mix of curiosity, pity, and even a faint sense of embarrassment on his behalf. His decades-long practice of invisibility was failing him. The familiar instinct to retreat, to avoid conflict at all costs, warred with a deeper, more primal urge. He didn't want this. He hadn't sought this attention, this confrontation. But Darren's blatant disrespect, the outright dismissal of his worth, struck a chord that reverberated through years of suppressed memories. It was an insult not just to him, but to the very concept of quiet dignity. Then, without warning, Darren lunged forward. It wasn't a full-power attack, but a quick, deceptively casual jab aimed at Leo's shoulder, meant to startle, to intimidate, to force a clumsy reaction. "Come on, old man, let's see some of that discipline," he taunted, his eyes alight with malicious amusement. But Leo didn't flinch. His body, seemingly slow and tired moments before, moved with an uncharacteristic, almost supernatural fluidity. It wasn't a block or a counterattack in the traditional sense. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift of weight, a graceful rotation of his torso, a minuscule pivot of his foot. The jab, intended to connect squarely, sliced through the empty air where Leo had been, barely brushing his sleeve. Then, with a flicker of movement too fast for most eyes to follow, Leo's hand, still holding the mop handle, effortlessly tapped Darren's elbow, just enough to disrupt his balance. Darren stumbled, arms flailing for a split second, before catching himself, a bewildered scowl replacing his smirk. The move was utterly defensive, yet perfectly executed, a blend of speed, grace, and control that spoke volumes. It was not a display of brute force, but of an understated, profound mastery, the kind only a true martial artist could possess. This was Leo's revelation in an unwilling situation. He hadn't sought to show off. He was merely reacting to protect himself, and in doing so, he unveiled a fraction of his formidable, hidden talent. The brief, almost imperceptible exchange did not go unnoticed by everyone. Mr. Tanaka, the revered Grandmaster of Harmony Creek, a man whose quiet wisdom had guided generations of martial artists, had been observing from the far end of the dojo, a faint smile playing on his lips. His eyes, though aged, missed nothing. He had seen the subtle disdain in Darren's posture, the cruel glint in his eyes. And then he saw Leo move. Tanaka's smile vanished, replaced by a look of profound astonishment. He recognized the effortless grace, the perfect economy of motion, the sheer precision of Leo's defensive maneuver. It wasn't a lucky dodge. It was the reflexive, ingrained movement of a master. A gasp escaped Tanaka's lips, barely audible. He had seen that fluid power only a handful of times in his long career, and always in the legends of the art. He began to suspect that the quiet janitor was far more than he appeared. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, his eyes never leaving Leo. This was the helper witnessing the truth, a spark of recognition igniting in the mind of the only person who truly understood what he had just seen. Darren, however, felt only a surge of indignant fury. His face, initially contorted in confusion, now flushed crimson with anger. He had been made to look clumsy, foolish by a mere janitor. His pride, his carefully constructed image of invincibility, had been subtly, yet publicly, wounded. He couldn't comprehend how a man he viewed as insignificant could possess such unexpected agility. He dismissed it as a fluke, a lucky twitch. This brief, almost effortless countermove, rather than deterring him, fueled his arrogance further. He refused to acknowledge the skill, choosing instead to believe it was a random accident. This was the moment the antagonist, Type A, truly felt threatened, his pride wounded, and his desire to reassert dominance intensified tenfold. Darren clenched his fists, his composure unraveling. The whispers among the students, the subtle shift in their gazes from him to Leo, infuriated him. "Lucky shot, old man," he snarled, his voice no longer mocking but laced with genuine aggression. "You got lucky. You want to try that again? I'll show you what real fighting looks like." He puffed out his chest, attempting to reclaim his intimidating aura. He stomped his foot, signaling his intent for a more serious engagement. "Come on, janitor. Let's go a full round. No more games. Let's see if that luck holds up when things get serious." He gestured expansively towards the center of the dojo, challenging Leo to a public, full-contact spar, clearly intending to completely humiliate and expose him. His words dripped with condescension, an unmistakable challenge meant to belittle Leo and crush his unexpected display of defensive skill. He wasn't just asking, he was demanding, trying to force Leo into a fight he couldn't possibly win, in front of everyone. Leo slowly straightened, his eyes meeting Darren's. The mop handle, which had seemed so innocuous moments ago, felt like an extension of his arm, his body language shifting almost imperceptibly from weary janitor to something far more formidable. His calm demeanor, instead of placating Darren, seemed to infuriate him further. The tension in the dojo became unbearable, the air crackling with anticipation. Darren had thrown down the gauntlet, escalating the confrontation from a simple insult to a full-blown public challenge. Leo, the unassuming janitor, now found himself standing at the precipice of a battle he had long avoided, a battle that would force him to unveil the legendary past he had desperately tried to bury. The quiet before the storm was over. The storm itself was about to begin. The challenge, once a mere ripple of contempt, now swelled into a roaring tide that engulfed the Harmony Creek Martial Arts Center. Darren the Dragon. Thorne, emboldened by the gathering crowd and the perceived submission of the janitor, pointed a definitive finger towards the large, central dojo mat. "All right, old man, if you've got the guts, let's take this to the arena." His voice, dripping with sarcasm, resonated through the hushed hall. The main dojo, with its worn sparring mats, its high ceilings, and the framed photographs of champions that adorned its walls, including that faded image of Leo the Lion, became the symbolic battleground. It was a place steeped in the history of martial prowess, and now it was set to witness either Leo's public humiliation or an unimaginable resurgence. The very space that celebrated martial artistry was poised to highlight the perceived disparity between a celebrated black belt and a humble cleaner, making the stakes intensely personal for Leo. As Darren sauntered onto the mat, stretching ostentatiously, Leo remained still for a moment, the heavy mop handle still clutched in his hand. He felt the collective weight of the gazes upon him, the eager anticipation of the students, the incredulity of some instructors, and the barely concealed disdain of Darren's acolytes. There was a palpable sense that he was walking into a trap, a setup for a brutal public defeat. No one, save for the silent, observant Mr. Tanaka, believed Leo stood a chance. He was an older man, seemingly out of shape, confronting a young, powerful, and arrogant black belt. The odds were stacked impossibly against him, highlighting the hero's solitude in this daunting confrontation. He was utterly alone in this fight, facing not just Darren, but the collective skepticism of an entire martial arts community. A younger, more zealous instructor, eager to please Darren, stepped forward to act as a makeshift referee, though his bias was clear. "Just one round, gentlemen," he announced with an overly enthusiastic grin. "Submission or knockout, no time limit. Let's make it interesting." The declaration of no time limit, ending only upon submission or knockout, ratcheted up the tension. This wasn't a quick demonstration. It was an open-ended battle, designed to prolong Leo's inevitable defeat and maximize Darren's triumphant display. The pressure on Leo intensified exponentially. He wasn't just facing a skilled fighter. He was facing a grueling, potentially endless ordeal designed to break him. Leo slowly placed the mop against the wall, a deliberate act, a symbolic shedding of his janitorial guise. He reached up and, with a subtle movement, removed his glasses, tucking them carefully into his shirt pocket. As his eyes, now free of their usual lens, met Darren's, the faded scar above his left eye became more prominent, a silent testament to battles fought long ago. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd as some noticed the scar for the first time, a vague sense of unease starting to prickle their curiosity. Darren, seeing the glasses come off, scoffed. "Oh, finally taking it seriously, old man? Don't strain yourself." He adopted a classic MMA stance, radiating aggressive confidence. "Don't say I didn't warn you." But Leo merely took a deep, centering breath. His muscles, long accustomed to the repetitive motions of cleaning, began to subtly re-engage with a forgotten memory of balance and power. He stepped onto the mat, his feet finding a familiar, almost instinctive position. His posture, once slightly slumped, straightened almost imperceptibly, his weight settling into a stance that was subtly different from any martial art taught at Harmony Creek. It was a posture of raw, unadorned readiness, honed by a lifetime of rigorous training and countless unseen battles. The quiet man was gone, replaced by a profound stillness that hinted at immense, coiled energy. This was the ultimate test, the moment where Leo would either crumble under the weight of expectations and prejudice, or reveal the dormant legend within. The air was thick with anticipation, the very silence of the room thrumming with the unspoken question, what would the janitor do? The Harmony Creek dojo, usually a sanctuary of controlled movements and respectful discipline, was now an arena of raw, crackling tension. Every eye was fixed on the center mat, where Darren, the dragon Thorn, bounced on the balls of his feet, radiating aggressive confidence. He gestured for Leo to approach, a mocking smirk playing on his lips. "Come on, janitor. Let's get this over with. Don't waste my time." He was eager to crush the unexpected flicker of defiance, to reassert his dominance and solidify his reputation as the undisputed champion. The crowd, a mix of curious students, loyal supporters of Darren, and a handful of skeptical instructors, leaned forward, anticipation thick in the air. No one truly expected a fight, only a swift, humiliating demonstration of Darren's superiority. The makeshift referee signaled the start of the spar. Darren lunged immediately, a blur of powerful kicks and punches, each strike aimed with precision. He moved with the predatory grace of a seasoned fighter, his attacks relentless, designed to overwhelm. He threw a lightning-fast combination, a jab, a cross, followed by a thunderous roundhouse kick. The force of his blows whistled through the air, clearly meant to intimidate. Leo, however, didn't flinch. He didn't block with brute force, nor did he attempt to counterattack. Instead, his body moved with an uncanny, almost ethereal fluidity, shifting, weaving, and ducking with an effortless grace that made Darren's powerful strikes look clumsy and ineffective. He flowed around Darren's blows, his movements so subtle and economical that they seemed to defy physics. He was a whisper in the whirlwind, an unmoving calm in the heart of the storm. the crowd murmured, confused. Darren's attacks, meant to land devastatingly, found only empty air. As Darren's frustration mounted, Leo performed a seemingly insignificant act. He calmly reached up and removed his glasses, placing them carefully on the edge of the mat. As his eyes, now unmasked, met Darren's, the faded scar above his left eye became strikingly visible, a silent testament to countless unseen battles. The very air in the dojo seemed to still. Leo's stance subtly shifted, transforming from defensive to something ancient, primal, yet utterly controlled. He wasn't aggressive. He was simply there, an immovable object, a perfectly balanced force. He began to respond, not with attacks, but with perfectly timed parries and redirects, using Darren's own momentum against him, subtly throwing him off balance, making him stumble. He revealed just enough, a glimpse of pure, unadulterated mastery, enough to confuse and frustrate Darren without actually hurting him. The subtle grace in Leo's movements, the effortlessness with which he evaded every blow, slowly began to shift the perception of the onlookers. Darren, panting, sweat pouring down his face, felt a cold dread begin to creep into his arrogant heart. He had thrown everything he had, every technique, every ounce of strength, yet the old janitor remained untouched, almost mocking him with his effortless defense. His frustration boiled into a desperate fury. "Stand still, old man," he roared, abandoning all pretense of a spar for fun. He launched into his signature combo, the Dragon's Fury, a rapid-fire succession of high kicks and power punches designed to incapacitate any opponent. This was his ultimate unstoppable move, guaranteed to end the fight. He moved with a savage intensity, determined to land a knockout blow and reclaim his shattered pride. The crowd gasped, recognizing the ferocity of the attack. Leo, seemingly cornered against the edge of the mat, simply closed his eyes for a split second, an ancient calm settling over his features. As Darren's final devastating punch aimed for his head, Leo performed a movement so breathtakingly fast and precise, it was almost imperceptible. He didn't just dodge. He slipped through an infinitesimally small gap in Darren's attack, a tiny window of opportunity that only a true master could have seen, much less exploited. Then, in the same fluid motion, his open hand, moving with the speed of a viper, gently tapped Darren's solar plexus, a precise, controlled touch that carried no force, no impact, yet had an immediate, devastating effect. Darren froze mid-strike, his eyes wide with shock. His powerful momentum vanished, his body stiffening. He stumbled backward, completely off balance, not from impact, but from the sudden, inexplicable disruption of his core. He tripped over his own feet, arms flailing, and crashed to the mat in a heap, utterly defeated not by brute force, but by the sheer, unquantifiable mastery of Leo's counter. He lay there, stunned, humiliated, completely incapacitated not by pain, but by the shattering realization of his own utter inadequacy. This was the breathless moment, the impossible maneuver, the non-violent but utterly decisive victory, the legend's silent roar echoing through the stunned silence. The entire Harmony Creek dojo held its breath. Then, a collective, awestruck gasp rippled through the stunned crowd. Silence stretched, thick and heavy, as everyone tried to process what they had just witnessed. Darren, the invincible dragon, lay on the mat, not knocked out, not injured, but completely defeated by a touch, a mere whisper of motion. The collective silence shattered. A ripple of murmurs, hushed and disbelieving, swept through the room. "Did you see that? How did he didn't even touch him." The murmurs swelled into excited chatter, then erupted into a spontaneous, thunderous ovation. Students, instructors, and even the initially skeptical onlookers rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, their faces alight with a mixture of shock, awe, and burgeoning respect. Darren's supporters, previously arrogant, now looked utterly bewildered, their faces pale with the sudden shift in power. Mr. Tanaka, the Grandmaster, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, slowly walked towards the center of the mat. He looked at Leo, his gaze filled with profound reverence, then turned to the sepia-toned photograph of Leo the lion on the wall. He pointed a trembling finger at the photo, then at Leo, then back at the photo, a silent, powerful acknowledgement. Leo, Tanaka whispered, his voice thick with emotion, loud enough for only Leo and a few nearby students to hear. It truly is you. The lion has returned. He then performed a deep, formal bow, a gesture of ultimate respect reserved only for the most esteemed masters. Darren, still on the mat, his face contorted in a silent scream of humiliation, could only watch, his world crumbling around him. The public vindication of Leo Maxwell, the unassuming janitor, was complete. He had not only defeated his arrogant opponent but had reclaimed his legendary status, proving that true power lay not in outward show, but in profound, understated mastery. The aftermath of Leo's astonishing victory reverberated through Harmony Creek like a sonic boom. Darren, the Dragon Thorn, once the center's golden boy, found his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. The initial shock gave way to a wave of public ridicule and professional consequences. His sponsors, quick to distance themselves from his humiliating defeat and exposed arrogance, pulled their lucrative contracts. Social media, a platform he had once used to flaunt his superiority, now became a relentless echo chamber of his downfall, filled with memes and derisive comments about the black belt humbled by the janitor. Stripped of his contracts and his reputation, he was quietly, yet firmly, expelled from Harmony Creek Martial Arts Center. His arrogance, the very fuel of his ambition, had consumed him, leading to a complete and utter downfall that mirrored his egregious pride. Darren, humbled in the most public and painful way, vanished from the local martial arts scene, his once promising career extinguished by his own hubris. In the days that followed, Michael, the young student Leo had quietly helped in Chapter 1, approached Leo with a profound sense of remorse and renewed respect. He had been one of Darren's ardent admirers, initially swept up in the younger fighter's charisma. But witnessing Leo's quiet mastery and Darren's ignominious defeat had been a profound awakening. "Mr. Maxwell," Michael began, his voice thick with emotion, I was so wrong about you, about everything. I saw how Darren treated you, and I didn't say anything. I'm truly sorry." He then bowed deeply, a gesture of genuine repentance and admiration. This heartfelt apology marked Michael's transformation from a misled admirer to a sincere advocate, an example of antagonist, type B's, genuine remorse, and subsequent support. He began spending his free time helping Leo clean the dojo, not as a chore, but as an act of service and learning, eager to absorb any wisdom Leo might impart. The martial arts world, particularly the traditionalists, buzzed with whispers and then outright clamor about the return of the lion. Mr. Tanaka, the Grandmaster, wasted no time. A week after the sparring match, he formally approached Leo, not in the janitor's closet, but in his personal office, filled with ancient scrolls and awards. "Leo-san," Tanaka said, bowing respectfully, "it would be an honor beyond measure if you would consider becoming the senior instructor of Harmony Creek. Your wisdom, your technique, your spirit, this is what truly defines martial arts. Our students, our community, they need you." Leo initially hesitated. The thought of stepping back into the spotlight, of shedding the comfortable anonymity he had cultivated for decades, was daunting. He had chosen the quiet life for a reason, seeking solace away from the pressures and scrutiny that came with greatness. But then he looked around the dojo, at the young, eager faces, at Michael who now looked at him with such profound respect, and at the still gleaming floors he had meticulously maintained. He realized this wasn't about fame, it was about legacy. It was an opportunity to teach not just fighting techniques, but the deeper philosophy of discipline, respect, and humility that he embodied. This was a new opportunity for Leo, a chance to fulfill a purpose that transcended personal comfort, allowing him to nurture a new generation of martial artists. He nodded slowly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "It would be my honor, Tanaka-san." Weeks later, as dusk settled over Harmony Creek, Leo and Tanaka sat cross-legged on the main dojo mat, a silent, almost sacred peace between them. The sounds of the evening class, a gentle rhythm of practiced movements and soft commands, drifted from the next room. "You know," Tanaka began, his voice soft, "when you disappeared all those years ago, everyone assumed the legend of Leo the Lion had simply faded. But I always knew there was more. The grace in your movements, even when you cleaned, it spoke volumes. Leo sighed, a long, deep exhale. He looked at the old photograph of Leo the lion on the wall, no longer averting his gaze. I ran, Tanaka-san. After the incident, after the spotlight became too much, after I realized that even in victory there was a kind of emptiness, a constant pressure to prove yourself. I wanted peace. I wanted to disappear into the quiet, away from the expectations, away from the fights. He paused, a flicker of old pain in his eyes. I found a different kind of peace, a hidden one, in simply existing, in working with my hands, in being invisible. But true strength, Tanaka countered gently, his eyes wise and knowing, is not found in hiding, but in knowing when to step forward. You taught Darren a lesson he desperately needed, Leo-san, and you reminded everyone here what true martial arts really mean. Not just power, but character. The world still needs your wisdom. This contemplative dialogue solidified Leo's past, his reasons for retreat, and his newfound acceptance of his purpose. Leo nodded, a serene expression settling on his face. He had fought his last battle, not against an opponent, but against his own desire for invisibility. He had found his peace, not by retreating from the world, but by choosing to re-engage with it, on his own terms. 2 years later, the Harmony Creek Martial Arts Center hummed with a different kind of energy. The competitive roar had been replaced by a pervasive sense of respectful diligence, a quiet hum of purposeful learning. Leo Maxwell, no longer just the night janitor, stood at the heart of it all. His once humble cleaning uniform had been replaced by a crisp black GI, his posture straighter, his presence radiating an undeniable authority born not of rank, but of profound wisdom. He was now the beloved senior instructor, a figure revered not just for his legendary past, but for the profound lessons he imparted daily. He didn't just teach techniques, he taught the philosophy behind them, the mental discipline, the humility, and the respect that were the true cornerstones of martial arts. He attracted a new generation of students, drawn not by flashy moves, but by the promise of genuine self-improvement. His influence extended far beyond the dojo mats. Leo had established the Lion's Heart Scholarship Fund, a non-profit initiative dedicated to providing martial arts training to underprivileged children in the community. He believed that the discipline and philosophy of martial arts should be accessible to everyone, regardless of their background. The fund covered tuition, GIS, and even transportation for kids who otherwise would never have had the opportunity. He didn't seek public accolades for this, but his story and the impact of his fund quietly spread, inspiring similar initiatives in neighboring towns. He often visited community centers, sharing his journey not as a tale of personal triumph, but as a testament to the transformative power of perseverance and the importance of finding one's true path, even if it meant returning to a spotlight once shunned. He had truly found his paying-it-forward calling, enriching his community and building a legacy far grander than any championship title. Michael, the young student Leo had first helped, had flourished under Leo's tutelage. He was no longer the frustrated teenager, but a disciplined, talented martial artist, embodying the principles of respect and humility. He had become Leo's devoted assistant instructor, his right hand in both teaching and managing the scholarship fund. Their bond was one of deep mutual respect, a testament to the quiet guidance Leo had offered years ago. Michael often recounted the story of how Leo had silently intervened that night, preventing him from giving up, a narrative that reinforced the deep impact of quiet mentorship. One serene afternoon, Leo stood in the center of the main dojo, bathed in the soft, golden light filtering through the high windows. His students, a diverse group of all ages and backgrounds, stood in perfectly aligned rows before him, their faces eager, their postures attentive. They executed a series of traditional bows, a rhythmic display of respect and discipline. Leo, without his glasses, his scar visible, returned their bow with a profound sense of peace. He looked completely at ease, his movements fluid, his eyes clear and full of a quiet wisdom. His gaze drifted to the wall, where the sepia-toned photograph of Leo the lion now hung prominently, respectfully cleaned and illuminated. And right beside it, a new, large-framed photograph had been placed. A candid shot of Leo Maxwell himself, taken during a recent training session, captured in a moment of quiet contemplation, his eyes gleaming with profound insight and unwavering purpose. It was a powerful final symbolic image, signifying not just the return of a legend, but the seamless merging of his past and present. The lion had indeed returned, not as a fleeting champion, but as an enduring master, whose wisdom and humility continued to light the path for countless others, solidifying his second spring, a time of profound fulfillment and lasting legacy. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining the journey.